My sister uninvited me from her son's graduation because I was too poor. The same night her business collapsed. She finally learned who paid for his full ride. I never thought I'd be the guy posting one of these stories, but after what went down last month, I need to know if I took things too far. This is long, but I promise it's worth it. My name is Marcus. I'm 58 years old, living alone in Phoenix since my wife Alina passed 6 years ago. The silence in our house still catches me off guard. Sometimes Alina used to fill every room with her presence, her laugh, her constant humming while she cooked. Now it's just me and the ticking of the grandfather clock she bought at an estate sale 20 years ago. But this isn't about my grief. This is about my sister Rachel, her husband Derek, and how I discovered that sometimes the best revenge is served with financial documents and a side of truth. Let me paint you a picture of our family dynamic. Rachel is my younger sister by 4 years. Growing up, she was the golden child, straight A's, student council president, full ride to college. She married Derek Anderson at 32 after years of focusing on her career. They struggled with fertility for years before finally having Nathan through IVF when Rachel was 38. Maybe that's why they were always so intense about his success. When you wait that long for something, you want it to be perfect. Together they built what everyone considers a success story. Rachel runs a thriving real estate agency specializing in commercial properties. Derek owns a chain of CrossFit gyms across Arizona and Nevada. They live in a 5,000-square-foot house in Scottsdale, drive matching Teslas, and take vacations to places I can't pronounce. Me? I spent 32 years as a warehouse operations manager for a logistics company. Same company, same building, same break room coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. I drove a 2008 Honda Civic, lived in the same 1,800-square-foot ranch house Alina, and I bought in 1985, and considered a wild vacation to be a weekend in Sedona. At least that's what Rachel and Derek believed. The truth was more complicated. See, back in 1991, my Marine buddy Tommy Nguyen came to me with an investment opportunity. His nephew was starting some computer thing in California, needed investors. I threw in $5,000, which was huge money for Alina and me back then. That computer thing turned out to be one of the early internet service providers. When they went public in '98, my $5,000 turned into $400,000. Did I tell Rachel? No, because by then she and Derek had already started their pattern of, let's call it concern. Every family dinner came with Derek's helpful advice about retirement planning, questions about whether I was okay financially. Rachel would pat my hand and say things like, "Marcus, you know we're here if you ever need help, right? I worry about you in that big house all alone." They meant well, I think. But there was always this undertone, poor Marcus, stuck in his warehouse job while we're conquering the business world. So I kept investing, quietly. Tech stocks in the '90s, real estate during the 2008 crash, a few angel investments in startups through another Marine connection. By the time I retired in 2013, my portfolio was worth about $3.2 million. Not tech billionaire money, but more than enough for a warehouse manager who ate bologna sandwiches for lunch every day. Alina knew, of course. We joke about it sometimes, sitting in our modest living room, watching Rachel and Derek not so subtly hint about downsizing, while we sat on a goldmine they couldn't even imagine. Alina would squeeze my hand and whisper, "Let them think what they want, me Amber. We know who we are." But Alina died in 2018. Pancreatic cancer. 3 months from diagnosis to goodbye. And suddenly all that money meant nothing because I couldn't buy more time with her. Rachel's response to my grief was predictable. She'd stop by exactly twice a month, always on Tuesdays, always for exactly 30 minutes. She'd bring some self-help book about grief or a brochure for a senior living community. You shouldn't be alone in that big house, Marcus. Or some MLM supplement that was supposed to help with depression. Derek usually waited in the car, taking calls. Their son Nathan was different, though. Nathan started visiting me on his own when he was in high school. Kid would ride his bike 7 miles just to sit with me and talk about his AP environmental science class. He wanted to be an engineer, specifically focused on sustainable water systems. His eyes would light up talking about desalination technology and watershed management. "Mom and Dad want me to go into business," he told me once, slumped on my couch. "Dad says engineering is for people who want to work for entrepreneurs, not be one." "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to help solve the water crisis," he said without hesitation. "But Mom says there's no money in saving the world." That conversation stuck with me. When Nathan got accepted to Arizona State's engineering program, he came to me almost in tears. "The financial aid isn't enough," he said. Mom and Dad say they'll pay, but only if I switch to business. They won't invest in a degree they think is worthless. That night, I made a decision. But here's where I need to be honest. I didn't create some elaborate fake scholarship. That would have been impossible. Instead, I did something simpler. I contacted ASU's engineering department about their existing scholarship programs. They had a general fund for environmental engineering students, but it was underfunded. I offered to make a substantial anonymous donation, $50,000 per year, specifically earmarked for one additional full-ride scholarship. The only preferences I requested were that it go to a local student with demonstrated passion for water sustainability. Nathan had to compete with 47 other applicants. He won on his own merits. His essay about Arizona's water future was brilliant. The scholarship committee never knew I was his uncle. I just gave them the money and let them choose. He was ecstatic when he got the letter. Showed it to his parents, who suddenly became very supportive of his engineering dreams now that they didn't have to pay for them. Rachel even bragged about it at family dinners, her brilliant son, earning a full scholarship. For 4 years, I watched Nathan thrive. He sent me updates about his classes, his internships, his research projects. He was brilliant, made Dean's List every semester, got published in undergraduate journals, landed internships with major environmental firms. His parents took credit for his success, of course. Derek loved telling people how his son was following in the family tradition of excellence. But here's where the story gets interesting. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, how convenient that his businesses were connected to mine. Truth is, it wasn't some master plan. It was dumb luck that turned into an opportunity. About 3 years into Nathan's education, I was reviewing my investment portfolio with my financial advisor. I noticed one of my holdings. I owned about 8% of a real estate investment trust called Desert Holdings LLC. Not a controlling interest, just enough to get quarterly reports. Huh, I said, looking at their tenant list. CrossFit Anderson, that's my brother-in-law's business. My advisor pulled up the details. Derek leased 3 of his 5 locations from properties in the Desert Holdings portfolio. Pure coincidence, I'd invested in Desert Holdings years before Derek opened those locations. Similarly, I discovered that I was a minority investor, about 6%, in Sunset Development Partners through a fund I'd bought into. They happened to be one of Rachel's major clients for commercial listings. I didn't have control over these companies. I couldn't just snap my fingers and change things. But I did have relationships with people who had more influence and information about how these businesses operated. This system of quiet knowledge worked fine until 3 weeks ago. Nathan was graduating with his master's degree in environmental engineering. Kid had done it in 5 years total, bachelor's and master's. He'd already landed a job with a major firm specializing in water reclamation. I was so proud I could burst. Rachel called me on a Thursday afternoon. I could hear the fake cheer in her voice, the one she used when she was about to say something unpleasant. "Marcus, so Nathan's graduation is coming up." "I know," I said. "May 15th, I've got it circled on my calendar." "Right, well, about that?" She paused. I could practically hear her choosing her words. "We're having a celebration at the Phoenician Resort. Very intimate, very exclusive." The Phoenician, only the most expensive resort in Scottsdale, of course. "The thing is," she continued, "the resort has a strict limit on the number of guests, fire code, you know, and with Derek's business partners and Nathan's new employers, we're already at capacity." "I see," I said, though I was starting to wish I didn't. "Plus, it's $500 per person," she added quickly. "Which is just ridiculous, I know, but that's what they charge." "We didn't want you to feel obligated to spend that kind of money." "Right, because the man they thought lived paycheck to paycheck couldn't afford a fancy dinner." "So we thought," she continued, "maybe it would be better if you celebrated with Nathan separately. You could take him to that diner you like. Wouldn't that be nice? More personal, that diner." She meant Murphy's, where Alina and I used to go for anniversary dinners because it was what we could afford when we were young, where I still went every Sunday for their green chili omelet because Alina loved it. "You're uninviting me from my nephew's graduation party," I said flatly. "Oh, Marcus, don't be dramatic. We're not uninviting you, the venue just has limitations. And honestly, you hate these formal things anyway. Remember Dad's funeral? You left the reception after 20 minutes. I left because I couldn't stand listening to Derek network at my father's funeral, but she'd remembered it differently, apparently. "Sure," I said, my voice calm. "I understand completely." "Oh, good, I knew you'd be reasonable. Nathan will be so busy at the party anyway with all the networking. This is really for the best. Maybe you can see him the week after." After I hung up, I sat in my living room for a long time. Alina's photo smiled at me from the mantel. They finally did it, I told her picture. They finally pushed too far. Alina always said I was too patient with my family, too willing to accept their dismissive treatment. You're worth 10 of them, me Amber, she'd say. One day you'll need to show them that. That day had come. But here's the thing, I couldn't just make phone calls and destroy their businesses. That's not how minority investments work. What I could do was use my relationships and knowledge strategically. I made my first call to Jim Patterson, who served on the board of Desert Holdings with me. Jim and I had become friends over the years, bonding over coffee at boring quarterly meetings. Jim, I've been thinking about those CrossFit leases that are up for renewal, I said. What's our strategy there? Standard renewal, I assume. Why? Well, I've been looking at the market rates in those areas. We're significantly under market. Maybe it's time to adjust closer to current values. Jim was a businessman. He didn't need to know about my family drama. You might have a point. I'll bring it up at the next board meeting. My next call was to Amanda Anderson at Sunset Development. I'd helped her nephew get an internship years ago, and we'd stayed in touch. Amanda, I heard through the grapevine that you're reviewing your contractor relationships. Always, she said. Why, you have a recommendation? Actually, I've been hearing some concerning things about R&C commercial real estate. Nothing concrete, but might be worth looking at other options. Interesting, we're actually up for renewal with them next month. Maybe it's time to put it out for bid. These weren't lies or manipulation. Desert Holdings was undercharging for prime real estate. Sunset Development SHOULD periodically review their contractors. I just helped timing along. 4 days after Rachel's call, my phone rang. It was Nathan. Uncle Marcus, can we meet? Something weird is happening. We met at a coffee shop near ASU campus. Nathan looked stressed, fidgeting with his cup. My parents are freaking out, he said without preamble. Dad just found out his rent might triple on 3 locations. Mom's biggest client is putting their contract out for bid. My parents are talking about canceling the graduation party because they need to reassess finances. What's going on? This was the moment. I could play dumb, let them spiral. Part of me wanted to the petty part that had endured years of condescension. But looking at Nathan, this kid who'd actually seen me as a person worth knowing, I couldn't do it. Nathan, I said carefully, what do you know about your scholarship? He blinked at the subject change. The Environmental Engineering Excellence Award, just that it covered everything. Why? Did you ever wonder why ASU suddenly had funding for one additional full-ride scholarship the exact year you applied? His face went very still. Uncle Marcus, I explained everything. The anonymous donation, the specific preferences that happened to match his interests, the annual renewal I'd guaranteed for 5 years. But this is almost $300,000, he said, staring at me. $283,740 to be exact, I said. Worth every penny. You earned that scholarship, Nathan. You competed against dozens of other qualified students. I just made sure the scholarship existed. But why didn't you tell me or them? Would your parents have accepted help from me? I asked. The warehouse worker, the family disappointment. They made it clear what they thought of my financial situation every time they visited. And now, his voice was very quiet. The rent increases, Mom's contract. I explained about my investments, how I discovered the connections, how I'd made some strategic suggestions to people who had more influence than me. I don't have the power to destroy their businesses, I said honestly. I own small percentages, sit on a few boards, but I do have relationships and I use them. Maybe that makes me petty. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then they don't know what you've done for me. No, I agreed. They need to, he said firmly, and you're coming to that graduation party. I don't care about fire codes or guest limits. Nathan, I don't want to cause problems between you and your parents. They caused the problems, he interrupted. By being snobs, by treating you like you're less than them, by not seeing you. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling them right now. The meeting was set for that evening at my house. I spent the afternoon cleaning, not that it needed it. Nervous energy. Alina would have laughed at me, fussing with throw pillows she'd bought at Target like they were precious artifacts. Rachel and Derek arrived exactly on time, looking deeply uncomfortable. It was the first time Derek had been inside my house in 5 years. Nathan said it was urgent, Rachel said, perching on the edge of my couch like she might catch something from it. Nathan didn't waste time. Mom, Dad, I need you to explain why Uncle Marcus isn't invited to my graduation party. Nathan, sweetie, we explained about the venue limits, Rachel started. I called the Phoenician, Nathan cut her off. They said you could add up to 20 more people to your reservation, so try again. Derek shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated, son. There are certain expectations at these events. We just thought Marcus would be more comfortable. Bullshit, Nathan said flatly. Rachel gasped at the profanity. You're embarrassed by him, just admit it. We're not embarrassed, Rachel protested. We worry about him, Nathan. These events can be overwhelming. For who? I interrupted quietly. For me or for you? She turned to me and for the first time in years really looked at me. Marcus, we just want what's best. You want what's easiest, I corrected. It's easier to keep me in a box, poor Marcus, alone in his old house, scraping by on his pension. It's easier than admitting you might not know everything about me. What's that supposed to mean? Derek asked. So I told them, started with Tommy's investment opportunity. Explained the real estate purchases, the board positions, the quiet accumulation of wealth while they assumed I was struggling. I showed them my portfolio summary not to brag, but to make a point. 4.7 million, Rachel's voice cracked. Give or take, I said. Market fluctuates. But I wasn't done. I explained about Nathan's scholarship, pulling out the donation receipts I'd kept. The Environmental Engineering Excellence Award, Rachel whispered. You made sure it existed, I confirmed. Nathan earned it himself, beat out 47 other applicants. I just funded the opportunity. The silence stretched. Finally, Derek found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? When? I asked. During your 30-minute visits where you spent 20 minutes telling me about your successes. The holidays where you asked if I needed money, the family dinners I stopped being invited to because you were keeping it small. We thought you preferred, Rachel started. You thought what was convenient to think, I said, not unkindly. It was easier to see me as someone who needed your pity than as an equal. Nathan spoke up. Tell them about the business connections, Uncle Marcus. So I explained about Desert Holdings and Sunset Development, how I discovered the connections by accident, how I'd made suggestions that might affect their businesses. You're sabotaging us? Derek asked, his face flushing. No, I said firmly. I'm letting market forces work. Your rent was below market value that was going to change eventually. Sunset Development should review their contractors periodically. I just accelerated the timeline. Because we didn't invite you to a party? Rachel's voice was small. Because you've spent 20 years treating me like I'm less than you, I said simply. Because you made decisions about my worth based on assumptions. Because you were so confident I couldn't afford a $500 dinner that you didn't even give me the option. Rachel was crying now. We were trying to protect you. We didn't want you to feel obligated. To spend money you assumed I didn't have, I finished. I know, that's the problem. Derek stood up, pacing. So what now? You've made your point. You're rich, we're assholes. What do you want? I want to go to my nephew's graduation party, I said simply. I want to stop being the family member you're ashamed of. I want you to see me really see me, not the version you've created in your heads. Of course you're coming, Rachel said immediately. Of course, I'm so sorry, Marcus. We've been horrible. You've been human, I corrected. Humans make assumptions, but maybe it's time to stop. Nathan smiled for the first time all evening. I already called the Phoenician and added you to the reservation. You're sitting at the main table. The graduation party was 2 weeks later. I wore my best suit bought at special for the occasion, though I didn't tell them that. Rachel insisted on picking me up, arriving with Derek in their Tesla. The Phoenician was as fancy as I'd expected, but something was different this time. Rachel introduced me as Nathan's uncle, the investor, without a trace of irony. Derek actually asked my opinion about his expansion plans, but the best moment came during the speeches. Nathan stood at the podium, handsome in his cap and gown, and thanked his parents for their support. Then he turned to me. But there's someone else I need to thank, he said. My uncle Marcus. He's the one who made my education possible through an anonymous donation to ASU. He never asked for recognition, never held it over anyone's head. He just quietly made sure I could follow my dreams. The room murmured. I felt faces turning toward me. Uncle Marcus taught me that real success isn't about what car you drive or where you live, Nathan continued. It's about integrity. It's about helping others without needing credit. It's about being true to yourself even when the world makes assumptions about you. He raised his glass. To Uncle Marcus, who shows me every day what quiet strength looks like. I had to blink hard to keep my composure. Alina would have loved this moment. It's been a month since the party. Things are different. Not perfect. You can't erase 20 years overnight. Rachel visits weekly now, and we're slowly learning to talk to each other as equals. She still occasionally slips into her old patterns, but catches herself. Derek asked me to review his business plan for expansion. I gave him honest feedback, and he actually listened. We're not best friends, but there's respect now. Nathan calls me every few days. His new firm is working on a project to bring sustainable water systems to rural Arizona. He says he's naming his first major project Alina Springs. I told him she would have loved that. But here's what keeps me up at night. Did I handle this the right way? Should I have just been honest from the beginning? Or did they need this shock to really see me? Part of me wishes I'd just told them about the money years ago, but honestly, I don't think they would have believed me, or worse, they would have only seen the dollar signs, not the person attached to them. Alina always said the truth has a way of coming out. I just gave it a push. So Reddit, I need your judgment. Was I wrong to use my connections to create pressure? Should I have just accepted being excluded and moved on? Or were they the ones who needed this wake-up call? Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you want more stories about family drama and hidden millionaires, hit subscribe and tap the bell. Update. Since some of you asked, yes, I'm setting up a legitimate scholarship fund in Alina's name now. One that's actually public and helps multiple students. Nathan's helping me design the criteria. Turns out the kid inherited his aunt's heart, along with his uncle's stubbornness.